You're listening to The Breakfast Show on Faith FM with Kathy and Lawson.
Absolutely.
And today we have Dr. Dick Tibbits as our special guest, our special interview for the day. And he is the author of the famous book, Forgive to Live, and How Forgiveness Can Save Your Life. Today we're going to be talking about all about forgiveness. If you have questions about forgiveness, let us know. And we are going to pass them on to Dr. Tibbits as well. Dr. Tibbits, welcome to The Breakfast Show. What an honor to have you with us this morning.
Yes, thank you so much for having me with you. I'm looking forward to this.
So, Dr. Tibbits, I'd like to start with why forgiveness? Why did that topic call your attention? It's certainly not a topic that we see a lot of research done about. So I just wanted to understand a little bit what made you decide to research about forgiveness and to even write a book, a whole book about it.
Good question. So I was working in a hospital called Celebration Health, which was on the campus of the Walt Disney World in the community of Celebration. And we were seeking to provide more holistic health, body, mind, and spirit. And I was challenged to look at what spiritual intervention can we teach people that can actually improve their health. You know, in a medical community, everything is evidence-based. They want to see the science. And so I developed a study where we taught people with high blood pressure how to forgive. And as a result of practicing forgiveness, we were able to demonstrate clinically that we could reduce anger and also reduce blood pressure from stage 1 hypertension to normal blood pressure. And so that's what created my interest. And of course, if you're going to teach people how to forgive, you've got to teach them how to do it, not just tell them to do it. And that's what the book was all about.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So you noticed that their blood pressure actually came down significantly and measurably just by practicing forgiveness. This is really incredible.
Yes. And there's actually, it's easy to explain by the mechanism by which it occurs. So when I'm angry, hurting, upset because something has been done to me that I didn't want done to me, my brain signals my endocrine and hormonal system to release cortisol into the bloodstream. And this cortisol actually communicates with certain organs in our body, specifically with our stomach by shutting down digestion, with our heart by increasing heart rate and increasing blood pressure. And interesting enough, it also communicates with our immune system, shutting it down. And so this process of dripping cortisol because of my emotional reaction to the hurt and pain over time constantly elevates heart rate, thus leading to the condition of hypertension.
Wow. It's very interesting to see how the physiological effects of unforgiveness or bitterness and stress. So, Dr. Tibbits, how do we forgive? You know, what are the practical steps that you taught those patients about forgiveness? Is this something that only Christians can do or expected to do? How is forgiveness? You know, how does it work in a practical level?
Yeah, very good question. So, Christians definitely have an advantage because we live in a worldview that Christ forgave us. And because he forgave us, we experience forgiveness and thus we learn how to forgive. But you can also teach people who don't have that advantage how to forgive. In fact, in the programs I did where I was teaching people to forgive, the majority of people were not religious. They simply had a health problem and were looking for a solution. But interesting enough, that after going through a 2-month program on how to forgive, many of the participants said things like, you know, I haven't been to church since I was a child, and this whole program awakened within me a sense of my spiritual being. Or I felt more at peace with God, and this was very helpful in my inner core. So even though they didn't come with a Christian viewpoint, forgiveness is so anchored in Scripture that it does call upon, it does help us reflect upon God's work in our life. So that's the impact of the program. I do ask a very specific question. What can people do to forgive? How do we move from knowing I should forgive to actually forgiving? And while I'm going to share some principles, I want to say a couple of things to begin with.
Okay.
Number one, forgiveness is a process. It's not a one and done. It's not I simply say I forgive you and it's all settled, all done and gone away with. It's a process. And it's a process that may need to be repeated several times. And I want our listeners to hear this and understand it because oftentimes we can feel like, you know, I forgave somebody, but nothing feels different. Did it work? Am I doing it right? And so I want you to realize that the steps I'm going to share with you are a process, and be patient with yourself. Remember this.
Okay, it's a process. I love that.
Yes.
Okay.
And the deeper the wounds, the more it takes to heal them. Okay, so what's the first step? Well, the first step when you've been hurt is you have a choice to make. And that choice is to forgive or to choose not to forgive. And I like our listeners to remember it, because I'm going to loosely paraphrase Shakespeare here when I say to forgive or not to forgive. That is the question. And I say it a little tongue in cheek, but the truth is, every time I've been hurt, I have a choice to make. Will I forgive or will I not forgive? And that choice has consequences. If I don't forgive, my life is going to go down a pathway of bitterness and resentment towards what others have done to me. And I will have more negative thoughts and negative emotions that will disrupt me and that will affect me physiologically. That's the consequence of choosing to retain my bitter story rather than forgiving it. So step number one is, between the stimulus, something happened to me, and my response, I ask you to reflect for a moment and just consider forgiveness as the healthy option.
Okay. So the first step is to make a decision to forgive rather than to either hold on onto bitterness or to retaliate or to seek revenge or something else.
Yes. So What do I do once I make the choice? So in my book, I introduced to the reader the concept of reframing. So when you have a picture on the wall, we put a frame around it. And that frame simply focuses our attention to what's in that picture. There could have been other things in that picture, but we frame them out by helping us to focus. Well, our mind does the same thing. When something happens to us, we focus on how we perceive that event. So let me give an example.
Okay.
You've heard the expression, love is blind.
Yes.
What that means is, when I'm in love with someone, I tend only to see their good points. And while others will raise concerns or see something that I should be paying attention to, I can frame that out and just see the good points.
Correct.
Consequently, limiting my view. Well, you know what? Anger is equally as blind. And when I'm angry at someone, I only focus on the bad points. And so framing is how I focus things. Reframing is changing how I focus things. So a couple of points. Number one, reframing doesn't change the facts. The facts are the facts. What reframing does is change my view of the facts. A good illustration of this would be in a jury room. One lawyer presents all the reasons why a person is guilty, and you listen to all those reasons, you say, wow, that person really is guilty. But then the other lawyer shares all the reasons why that person is innocent, and you can just as easily think, yeah, I agree with that. They are innocent. How you frame information determines what you see. And so if you have been hurt by someone, your mind is already framing that event and surrounding it with all the negative things about that person that you can throw into that picture. And the conclusion is, you're really upset at that person. You see them as no good. You see them as bad, and you don't like them. And in fact, not only don't you like them, but you're hoping to get some revenge on them, to get paid back, to make things even, to balance the scale of justice. Mm-hmm. And that whole thinking process is steadily dripping cortisol into your bloodstream and causing your body turmoil as well as your mind turmoil, because you have all these negative things swimming around. So forgiveness is reframing. Let me give an illustration of that.
Okay.
When Jesus was nailed to the cross, the Roman soldiers, as they were striking the nails into his hands and feet, said, Father, forgive them. And then he offers a clue about how to forgive. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's reframing, because in essence, they knew exactly what they were doing. They had done this hundreds of times before. They have crucified many people. And when Jesus says they don't know what they do, he was reframing and saying, they don't know who I am. They don't know who they're nailing to the cross. They don't understand what they're doing. Jesus was enlarging the picture to see it from a broader perspective, as opposed to a narrow frame that only sees bad. He was opening up this frame to see good, to see a greater picture. And, you know, I like to tell people that if you've been hurt by someone else, don't live in the bitterness. Rather, take that to your advantage and become better. Because when you forgive, You're going through a process of letting go so that your life can move beyond that past event, so that you're not stuck there and you can move towards something better for your future.
So is that reframing is a bit of a general enough reframing that it can be applied to pretty much any circumstance? When we are hurt, and we are going to forgive that person, and say, you know what, ultimately they do not know what they were doing, and using that in a way to say they did it probably according to the best of their capacity, yet they didn't have the big picture of what justice looks like in mind. Is that something that can be applied to pretty much all cases where we get hurt?
Yeah, I like the way you said it. It's absolutely true. So here's what science tells us. People who are abused tend to abuse others. So I look at the abuse to me without realizing they're probably doing that because of something that happened to them. That's empathy, when I can say, it's not as personal as I feel it. It's not something about me that they're attacking. It says more about them. And so that's a reframing to see the larger picture as opposed to just seeing the thing they did against me. Now, with reframing, it's not necessarily you do it once and it's done. That thought or feeling may come back a week or two later. Reframe it again. It may come back a month later. Reframe it again. I'm reminded of Jesus' discussion with Peter when Peter said, should I forgive, 7 times? That's a lot, but should I do 7? And Jesus' response was, well, I tell you not 7, but 70 times 7. In other words, it's a process. But here's the encouragement that I want to share with our listeners. Every time you reframe that picture and make it a little bigger, make it a little more comprehensive, you will notice 2 things happening. Number 1, there will be a decrease in frequency, how often you remember that story. And number 2, there'll be a decrease in intensity, how gripping that story is in your life. And each time you reframe or each time you forgive, you're going to find some release from the frequency and some release from the intensity so that you can start to put that story behind you. Because here's the thing. If you keep living in the past, then your life never moves forward. Reframing is allowing you to re-understand that past, to start to loosen its hold on you so that you can move towards what God would have you to be rather than being stuck in what someone else has done to you.
So, Dr. Tibbits, so the step number 1 was about to make a decision to forgive rather than to hold on into the grudge or to try to seek revenge or retaliation. Step number 2 was to reframe it. What's step number 3? So
where do I go from here? Just to forgive, I realize that I need to reframe it's a process. And then I need to move on, which is what the whole Christian experience is. I need to move on towards what God's plan is for my life. You see, when I hold on to my bitterness, I'm really letting someone else's plan for my life dominate who I am. When I turn it over to God and forgive, I'm allowing God to take control of my life. And so forgiveness is a process from moving from the past, which is dominated by sin and sin towards me, to the future, which is dominated by grace and God's grace toward me. So I need to let go of the past in order to move forward. And that is the third step of forgiveness. Desmond Tutu, the bishop in South Africa, said this: without forgiveness, there is no future. And they recognized that as South Africa was coming out of the apartheid period and was finding more equality and more freedom, that the desire for revenge could destroy that country. And so rather than living and repeating the past, he challenged them to move forward to the future. I think in the United States, Martin Luther King says, I have a dream, and he dreamed of a better tomorrow. So forgiveness gives us that possibility of having a dream, to move forward with our lives, to do with our lives what God intends for our lives. In essence, delete the past and move forward to the future.
Wow, that is very powerful, and how I wish that nations around the world could adopt that same motto to themselves. So these are basically the steps. Are there more steps to that process, or is it a 3-step process about forgiveness, Dr. Tibbits?
So in my book, I share a lot of different components to forgiveness.
Okay.
But to simplify it, for the time frame we have. It's the past, the hurt, the bitterness, the disappointment I experienced, the present, I choose to forgive, and I start the process of reframing. And the future is I'm releasing myself from the past and moving to the future. You know, it reminds me of a story, and I'll share this real briefly. Two POWs, prisoners of war, were standing in Washington, D.C. at the Vietnam Memorial, which is a memorial which has carved in black granite the names of all the soldiers who died in that Vietnam conflict. These two soldiers were both prisoners of war, and they both spent considerable time being tortured, being held captive. And as they stood there feeling the emotions of all of that, the one POW turns to his friend and says this, "Have you forgiven your captors yet?" And the other POW turns back to him and says, "No, I will never forgive them for what they did to me. They hurt me, they punished me, they ruined my life. I shall never forgive them." And the first POW then says these words, "Then I guess they still have you prisoner, don't they?" You see, when we don't forgive, we are being held prison to our past, our hurt feelings, our desire for revenge, our pleading for justice. We keep circulating that. And I've known people that share that story of past that happened, an event that happened in the past for years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. It's still alive in them. Then you're still a prisoner. And forgiveness is a tool that can set you free.
Wow. That is a very powerful story, Dr. Tibbits. Dr. Tibbits, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us in that realm of forgiveness. Definitely something that no one in their human experience will be exempt from having to practice forgiveness. It's something that, as that person told you, it's something that we should learn from home and from our early ages, if not from home, at school, or if not at school, at church, somewhere. Mm-hmm. But often we get into adult life and into life in general, and we don't even have those skills. So I just want to thank you so much for dedicating so much of your time to educating people about how to actually forgive. And we're looking forward to have you again on our show, because I still have some questions for you in regards to forgiveness that I believe that they will be very, very useful for other people as well. But Dr. Tibbits, thank you so much, and we're looking forward to have you again with us next time on the show.
Well, thank you. You have my contact information, and I'd be glad to. If you get questions and we want to take this a little deeper, I'm glad to have another conversation.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
This is the second